Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I'm really excited to show you guys a demo of Red Canary. Uh, Before I forget, I want to mention to you guys that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out after, so don't feel like you need to take notes or anything. And please ask any questions that you have throughout this presentation. If I don't see them right away, I will definitely get to them at the end. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Cole Bolio, and I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm a sales engineer here at Red Canary. I've been at Red Canary for a little over 3 years now, and I really enjoy my job because I get to apply what I learned as an electrical engineer in school and in the workforce to help companies on a day-to-day basis solve the security issues that they have, and more importantly, help individuals at those companies just sleep better at night. Honestly, it's something that I really take pride in and really enjoy. In my free time when I'm not working, I always spend time with my wife and dog. A lot of times we spend time outside. Not today in Minneapolis. I woke up, it was -4. So no chance there's going to be a long walk today. I'll spend some time cooking, which I also enjoy doing as well. So as we get into the webinar today, I'm going to set the table by talking about the ever-evolving and changing threat landscape and how it impacts your teams as well as maybe yourself on this call. And then we're going to get into how Red Canary works and who we are. So as you can see on the graph here in the webinar, today's threat landscape creates a widening security operations gap, as those of you on the call can probably identify with. The demands and domains that security operations is responsible for continue to increase, while organizations' resources, whether that be fiscal or human resources that are allocated to that problem, are staying stagnant. And because of this, it's requiring organizations to evolve and think differently about how they go about protecting these domains. So we help organizations by guiding them through this, by breaking it down a little bit further into this matrix. And we organize it by using the NIST framework as the x-axis. And then each of the domains we're showing on the y-axis. And then we usually have a discussion about what organizations are comfortable performing completely in-house and what they're considering handing off completely or co-managing with a third party. And at the end of that discussion, this security operations bingo card, as we like to call it, usually looks a little something like this. When we have these types of conversations, we always recommend performing tasks that are extremely business specific, like anything related to in-house applications or something like re-imaging an endpoint in-house. With regard to everything else on this matrix, we believe it's fair game for a company to completely outsource or co-manage with a third-party vendor. And that's where a company like Red Canary would come in. How we work is we plug into your native tooling across the user, endpoint, and cloud domains and gather the telemetry from those tools. The way we're different from the rest of the market is we don't require any sort of agent to gather this telemetry. We plug it into the native tools that you've invested in. For specifics on that, let's use one of our partners in the endpoint domain, SentinelOne. With them, we use a feature called Cloud Funnel, which allows us to stream that data in real time and run it through what's our proprietary technology, our detection engine. This engine has been tweaked for the last 10 years, and our customers benefit from that security engineering work that we do on a daily basis by us surfacing threats to them based off of those analytics, catching things that those tools that they've already invested in are missing. And if we flag any interesting behavior, it gets put in front of our people who have been in the industry for 7 to 10 years plus before even coming over to Red Canary, who review it, confirm it, and then put it together at a timeline so that our customer always has the relevant artifacts related to that event in front of them. A lot of times for our customers, we are that last line of defense, and they rely on us to take action for them on their behalf. So they have to trust us, and they do trust us because of many different reasons. But one of them is this statistic right here. We shipped almost 70,000 threats last year, and 99.6% of them were considered true positives. We are like the canary in the coal mine in that way. When we say it is a real threat, it is real. So we act on our customers' behalf. And we do this through 3 different methods. Our automation platform, we guide you through these remedial efforts, and we have an active remediation offering. From the automation standpoint, I'll be showing you that during the demonstration today, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that to begin with here. But what I do want to say and make sure you know is that we are taking action 24/7, 365 at machine speed through that automation platform. For the guided portion, I'm going to take a step back and let you know that each Red Canary customer is assigned 6 to 7 US-based threat hunters to their account. They're on a team. And this team is here to help answer any sort of security related question that you have, whether that's, hey, my organization is got a contract coming up with our firewall vendor. We're looking at a couple other options. Which would you recommend out of those five? We could help guide you that way, or guide you if there's a security event that's actively going on in your environment. And that's where that service that I just alluded to and I'm showing on the screen comes into play. There's an emergency support line at the top of the Red Canary portal that you'll see when I head into it. Ultimately, how that works is if you do need our assistance in that emergency, you'll call that line, leave a voicemail indicating exactly what services you need and what help we can assist you with. And then we'll call you back as soon as we possibly can and have a Zoom spun up fully prepared to assist you to the extent that you need. And then finally, we have our active remediation product. Since the launch of this product, right after I joined, we've seen a large number of our customers either pivot to or initially purchase this offering. And that's because it includes our ability to provide hands-on keyboard, human-led response 24/7, 365. So for example, it's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday and Red Canary's seen some precursor to ransomware activity. Instead of us calling you in the middle of the night after we take that initial containment action of isolating the endpoint, we take care of everything else for you. And when we take action, you'll see exactly what we did and why inside of the threat. And in addition to that, we'll provide some strategic recommendations that you can review first thing Wednesday morning when you show up to work. So now we're going to move to the demonstration portion of this presentation. For this section, I'm going to present a scenario. And while presenting them, I'm going to act a little bit as an analyst working on through those threats. Please be wary though, and cut me a little slack. If I go between my role as that analyst back to the presentation mode, just know I'm no Timothy Charlemagne. I'm purely just an SE. At Red Canary, we work with organizations of all shapes and sizes and sectors. And the most common organizations I've served in my time here have been between 1 and 10,000 employees. And that is pretty similar to this company here, Grant Scale, which I'll be acting as the SOC lead for during the presentation. And where I'm going to start is onboarding. This will set the stage for the scenario I'll be discussing and give you some insight in how seamless it is to integrate into our product. So every Red Canary customer gets a portal as soon as that they sign on as a customer or we're doing a POC with us. And the first order of business that we do anytime that happens is integrate their technical suite into our product. As you can see here, we partner with the main providers in the space, a lot of them listed on this specific page. And we start by plugging in one of your user, cloud, or endpoint products. I mentioned SentinelOne earlier, so let's start there. With SentinelOne and a lot of our other products, all that's required to integrate is a few API keys, which you'll see here, that we take from your account. We work with the admin in this specific case. And then typically all we need is for you to create us a service account that we'll have access to from a threat hunting and detection engineering standpoint so that we can perform investigations in your environment. Once those guardrails are set up and they're properly saved, we'll start gathering that telemetry and you're effectively a customer in real time at that point. We will be able to perform that threat detection that I was talking about and ship you threats based off of that right from there. We have a technical implementation process where we'll go one by one through your security stack. And usually I see us go to the user side of the house after we plug in endpoint. And our most common specific integration would be Office 365. Office 365 is something that is extremely easy to integrate inside of our platform. All you would need is for auditing to be enabled inside your environment. Grant us permission to those specific logs, to review those logs, and then ultimately just enter in your tenant ID. If it's just these two integrations that we're taking in, truthfully, I've seen this happen for a customer in under 20 minutes. So it's a pretty cool process. Before I move on to the next step, I saw someone raising their hand, so I'm going to take a peek at that here in the Q&A. Tim, yes, we do have a Meraki integration. We have a direct integration into that tool here, which I will just showcase. If you ever needed to add one, you would just come into here and then search the tool to understand if you have it or don't. Looks like well, we had one previously, so potentially that may have been removed, but we have a number of either that integration method or we have a data lake that we can integrate into as well. So moving on to the next portion of our platform, after we get the technical information ingested into our platform, we always make sure to have our technical point of contacts for any sort of security event added to this specific call tree here. We have a bunch of automations that I'll talk about in a little bit here that will help determine how we should communicate with you for any sort of threat. But if there is a specific situation where we're extremely confident, we're seeing any sort of later stage post-exploitation type of behavior, like Cobalt Strike, something like that, we need to reach out to you right away. We will use this call tree here. So as soon as you're onboarded at Red Canary, we want to implore you to pick a lead who is going to be the first person we reach out to and have a couple backups as well. In addition to that, we love learning more about any details that you have in your incident response plan so we can fit into that. If you have an IR partner, great. We ask you to add that in here. And then any details you have about your network as well are always relevant and important. My favorite part about onboarding, because this is where I ultimately step in during a proof of concept or while I begin to work with a customer, is this automation platform. Truthfully, I see Red Canary customers really start leveraging the value that we can provide them by starting to build these playbooks out right away. And they're super easy. You don't need to have any sort of background using SOAR or SIM tools to be able to do this. You just need to have the ability to point and click. Even someone with an Iowa State education like myself is able to figure it out. How it works is on the left is what we call our trigger window, and on the right are our playbooks. So should all the parameters on the left be true, like a Boolean AND statement, these playbooks on the right are going to fire. One of the more common situations that I build out with my customers during proof of concepts to begin with is providing more after hours coverage. So potentially weekends or maybe nights and mornings for folks and overnight. So what I'm going to do here is build that weekend coverage out. And as you can see, it's just a simple point and click from a parameter standpoint. And voila, we have it built. So in the event that there's a high severity threat on a workstation on Saturday or Sunday, these playbooks on the right are going to fire. And most importantly, we're going to contain that threat as fast as we can right away. If it's a account-based threat, we'll be suspending or clearing that user session. On the endpoint side of the house, we'll isolate that endpoint, perform other actions at machine speed for you. We completely understand, though, that each organization's needs and demands are different. If there's a specific user or endpoint that you'd like to interject yourself into the process before we isolate them, we can reach out to you via Teams, text, Slack, whatever preferred method of communication you have, and then you would hop into the threat that I'm going to show you here in a little bit and approve or deny that isolation. Not only do we want to fit into your remedial workflows, we want to make sure we're fitting into those communication and operational workflows you have as well. If you have any sort of PagerDuty like tool, we can fit into that and create an incident there. If you have any sort of ticketing system, we can fit into it via email or API. And then most organizations we work with either have Slack or Teams. This is probably the most common automation I work with users to set up is either Slack or Teams so that they can be notified of any details about a threat 24/7, 365. And what's really cool, in my opinion, is we're able to take attributes from the threat I'm about to show you and provide those in each of the threats so that you have an understanding of how they are unique each time we ship them to you. So that is a little bit of what onboarding looks like at Red Canary, probably the fastest one ever completed. So if you recall, which it was not too long ago when we did this, we just set up a playbook inside of Red Canary to notify you when a threat comes in via Slack. I'm going to showcase that ability live here today. So you'll see here my specific Slack, and then I'm going to run this automation in the background here. And then boom, you'll see, okay, hey, Red Canary just reached out to me via Slack and let me know what happened during this specific threat. In this case, a user created an email forwarding rule that sends all emails to a Gmail address, which is a common exploitation or exfiltration tactic. Additionally, they successfully logged into a number of different services in our enterprise, Office 365, Bing, and something that's abnormal for this user, Microsoft Graph. Also, one of the logins was from an IP address that is associated with fraud and high-risk behavior. So we have the URL right here, and we're going to jump right into that threat and review it. Every threat that we ship our customers, regardless of whether it's an endpoint-based threat, cloud, or identity, has a similar look at the top of the screen. We're going to let you know how we classify it, as well as the correlated endpoint or identity to the activity that's going on. Below that, you're going to see that plain English description that I was just talking about in that Slack, letting you know in a couple sentences what occurred during this attack so that you don't have to jump right in and start reviewing. You'll have a good idea immediately when you hop into our portal. We're going to give you more information about the asset or identity. In this case, we're letting you know what kind of account they have, so you have an understanding of what privileges they have in your organization, what department they're in, and anything else we can gather. And where we're different, truthfully, from the rest of the MDR space, in my opinion, is that we don't just ship you a threat and don't give you any context behind it. We want to make sure that you understand the source of detection every single time we ship you a threat as well. If it's from a alert from one of the tools you've invested in, like Microsoft or the endpoint tool, we're going to let you know that here. If it's one of our behavioral analytics that I was referencing earlier, we're going to let you know that here. And in this case, this was one of our behavioral analytics only. If it is one of our behavioral analytics, we're going to let you know how it maps back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, as well as what it's actually looking for. In this case, it was two different detectors that flagged here, so you'd be able to review what they were specifically looking for. And then we have that timeline. And as a reminder, our US-based detection engineers are piecing together this timeline for you and providing the relevant artifacts that relate to this security event so that you don't have to do that investigation on your end. So I'm going to go into character here for a little bit. So have some patience with me. I'll be coming in and out of that. So I just got that Slack message. I'm hopping into the Red Canary portal here, and I see that there is a logon to Exchange. And Red Canary is telling me a bunch of logon attempts have been happening, and many of them deviate from the user's typical behavior. In addition to that comment, they're also letting me know that there was a successful login that came from an IP address associated with fraud and high-risk behavior. Taking a step back just to remind you all, these annotations are written by US-based individuals like I was referring to, those detection engineers, not machines. Back into character. We see a logon attempt was successful in Office 365, as well as Graph, and there's the Red Canary analyst letting me know that this is abnormal behavior for this user. They haven't logged into that service within the last 90 days. So some investigation that I would maybe have to do on my own, Red Canary is providing for me right here. Another successful login to Bing, and then what I think is really important, this email forwarding rule. So take a step back once more, and I promise this is the last time I'm going out of character. This is a perfect example of how Red Canary is able to sustain that high true positive rate that I was discussing earlier. For attacks on the identity side of the house, like account compromises, you'll notice that we don't just ship threats for just solely initial access behavior. We want to be confident that an account is compromised when we ship you a threat, so you can take action so we can take action on your behalf. This means a lot of the time that we're looking for maybe some post-compromise behavior in addition to all of that initial access signals that I was just showing you, like this email forwarding rule being created. All right, back into character for the final time. So I see here that this user inside of GrandScale created an email forwarding rule. I have all this information in front of me here to review the details of that, but ultimately Red Canary let me know that this user created an email forwarding rule to send all emails to an external address. And this is something that is commonly used as an exfiltration technique. Red Canary always lets me know how long it takes to detect the threat, so how long it takes for the telemetry from our environment to get flagged by their detection engine, and then how long it takes their people to organize this timeline, write the annotations, and have it peer reviewed before it's shipped to me. You'll see as soon as this is shipped to me, these automations kick off, and we isolate that user right then and there by clearing that user session as well as suspending them. And then I went in and did some further investigation when I hopped on the computer and saw that this user, after we isolated them, no longer had any details about logging in. So I reached out to the user, said, "Hey, let's reset that password," and we started to reclaim that identity from the specific user. From there, I always go after I remediate a Red Canary threat to the bottom of the screen and mark it as remediated, so Red Canary knows that this is taken care of. This will then lead to a common topic that I have in my monthly meetings with Red Canary. And that is reviewing all the activity that has occurred in my specific environment for the past month. So you'll see here a heat map that maps back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This heat map showcases based on this matrix that you can see up here, this specific color scale, letting you know, okay, how many detections did we see for specific techniques that were used in my environment? And our CSM works with our threat hunting team ahead of time to provide recommendations to help raise our security posture. A few examples are, for example, that threat I just showed you guys, the way we could have prevented that exfiltration from occurring was creating a policy inside of Office 365 to prevent email rules from being created to forward emails to an exterior domain. So that's a rule that Red Canary recommended my organization put in place, and we did that after. Another rule that they recommend, or another policy that they recommended when we first started working with Red Canary, was consolidating our remote access software inside of our organization. We had 6 or 7 tools pop up as soon as we started integrating into Red Canary because they have a potentially unwanted program list that contains those tools. And they gave us advice to consolidate onto 1 or 2 of those specific remote access tools that are used for legitimate business purposes. So we took their advice, and now we have another indicator of suspicious activity going on inside a grand scales environment. One of the reasons we signed with Red Canary to begin with was ultimately we're getting a bunch of noise, and really we wanted to partner with someone like Red Canary to reduce that noise in our environment and ultimately the number of threats that occur. So I set up a monthly report that gets sent to me as well as my boss as to how many threats we saw in our environment over the last month. And this number has been steadily decreasing over the time that we've been partnering with Red Canary. And I really like this report because it's very easy for my leadership to digest what Red Canary is doing on our behalf. All right. That's breaking character there for the final time. Thank you guys so much. I know we have a couple minutes left. I really appreciate your attendance today. If there's any other questions that anybody has, please let me know and put them in the chat. We have a few minutes left here, so I can answer those if you have them.
Yeah, I got one in the Q&A, Cole. How integrated are you in Microsoft Sentinel, specifically creation of native playbooks?
Yep. So we have a playbook that actually natively integrates into Sentinel to create an incident. We also can integrate directly with Microsoft Sentinel and investigate any incident that is generated on your behalf and bidirectionally sync that status. And you can see our Sentinel playbook right here. That's from the MDR side of the house. We also have an offering that is able to help customers that maybe have already stood up Sentinel but aren't quite sure what to send to it or are thinking about deploying a new SIEM in their space. We're able to help them not only stand up Sentinel, but also go through a cost analysis exercise to make sure that when you turn Sentinel on, you're not going to be hit with a very large bill from Azure. And then we also provide you with some content from a security standpoint, so some analytics, some runbook, some different dashboards that are customized. And then we have ongoing hours that our customers pay for to help make sure that everything's running properly over the cycle of a year. Maybe tweak some things if they break from a dashboard standpoint, give you new playbooks and analytics as well. So we integrate super well with Sentinel. It's probably our most popular SIEM that we integrate with, but we do not require a SIEM to work with Red Canary either, just to be clear.
Got some in the chat for you. At what level does the tool align with the MITRE framework?
Every detection analytic that I was speaking to earlier, everybody, and this is specifically you, Dan. We map back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So you'll see here in green, that's where we have an analytic in place for our customers to benefit from. So we can go a step further and look into, okay, hey, for PowerShell, this sub technique in MITRE ATT&CK, what type of coverage do we have there specifically? What is it looking for? So we map very well back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and that's where those discussions that I was referring to, Dan, occur based on that heat map. Raul, we are all API based, so we do not have any sort of agent. We leverage the tools that you've invested in and plug into them. So that's why the integration can be very quickly. Tim, as an MSP, can you create different customers in your interface with individual and global rules and reports? Yes, we work with a number of different MSPs, and we have a parent portal that has all the sub-child portals inside of it so that you can see their individual specific reports as well. And I could connect you, Tim, if you wanted to speak to our MSP team directly after this. Dan, could you reframe that question for me? I'm not sure I'm understanding what you mean in the level of the hierarchy.
Well, he gets back to you on that question in the Q&A. What size clients, customers does Red Canary MDR fit?
We fit pretty much every shape, size, and sector. Like I said earlier, the most common that I've worked with is organizations that have about 1,000 to 10,000 employees. And the reason we work commonly with those is they have a lot of these tools and challenges in place. We've definitely worked with bigger companies. We have a couple in the Fortune 10 that we work with, and we do a really good job in focusing on specific areas of their organization. And then we also have commercial level customers under 1,000 where we pretty much offload everything too. From a cost standpoint, Chad, how we price our specific offering is per endpoint. So let's say you have Sentinel-1 inside your organization. We charge per sensor installed. From a user standpoint, it's a mailbox account specifically, so that counts service accounts as well. And then from a cloud side of the house, we have a resource calculator for each domain. So GCP, Azure, and AWS that we ask you to run. So we have an understanding of what your resource count is, and then we scale those back depending upon the resource. From the MITRE ATT&CK side of the house, Dan, the way I'm going to answer your question is we provide just visibility into how we help protect organizations using the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We are using this as a reflection to understand, okay, hey, here's where you have coverage from Red Canary across the kill chain. Here's where we're seeing these types of techniques in your environment from the last 30, 60, 90 to a year, and understanding, okay, hey, what can we do to raise this posture to prevent these techniques from happening again? Tim, you can actually do it in the portal. So it's up to, we can set up automations to unisolate an endpoint in specific scenarios. If you wanted to do that yourself, you could also do that right here. So you could respond, isolate the endpoint, do any of these things via the EDR, and then unisolate it as well. And I actually see, Tim, a lot of our MSP customers using that active remediation offering just to take more of that work that usually falls upon the MSP off of your plate and onto ours. Dan, if I didn't answer your question fully, please find me on LinkedIn and we can take this offline. I want to make sure I'm getting that answered correctly. I can hang on for another minute or so if you guys would like to answer a couple more questions. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yep, looks like we got one more here. Do you have access to the EDR console directly?
Yes, we do. When I was talking about our integration into Sentinel-1, and this goes across any of our EDR platforms we work with, we need a service account created in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. We actually have an access package created so that our team can go in and do that digger deeping inside of your EDR platform. So if we need a threat hunt on something, or if we see some telemetry that flags something suspicious, we'll go in and review that console for you and actually take actions. Tim, from a firewall side of the house, no, we do not actually take any actions on firewalls. We treat any of that type of behavior on the endpoint specifically or in the user side of the house. No problem, Tim.
Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap there. We are at time. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.